Most students don't have a discipline problem. They have a system problem, and no one really talks about it. If you've ever sat down to study for hours, felt productive, and then forgot most of it the next day, yeah, you're not alone. I've been there too. You finish a long session, close your notebook, and there's this quiet thought in the back of your mind. Did I actually learn anything? Because that question matters more than we think. A while ago, I started looking into how top universities structure their courses. Not the prestige, not the professors, just the actual learning systems inside the syllabus. And honestly, what I found was kind of surprising. It wasn't about studying longer. It wasn't about pushing harder. It was about how the learning was spaced and how often students were forced to recall things, not just reread them. Think about this for a second. Most of us study like this. We read, highlight, maybe take notes, and then move on. It feels productive, it looks organized, but it's mostly passive. And passive studying feels good in the moment, but it fades fast. Now here's the shift. In a lot of these courses, students aren't just absorbing information, they're constantly being asked to pull it out of their memory. Short quizzes, weekly reflections, small assignments, not to test them, but to strengthen the memory itself. Because recalling something is what actually makes it stick. Let that sink in. It's not about how clearly you understand something while reading it. It's about whether you can remember it later without looking. And that's where most people struggle. Not because they're not smart enough, but because no one really teaches them how memory works. Honestly, this changed the way I think about studying. Instead of asking, did I finish this chapter, the better question became, can I explain this without looking? And at first, it's uncomfortable. You sit there trying to remember and your mind just goes blank. It feels like you're failing, but you're not. That moment, that struggle is actually the learning happening. Now here's the simple system that kept showing up again and again. First, learn a small piece, not a whole chapter, not 2 hours of content, just something you can realistically process in one sitting. Then close everything and try to recall it, out loud if you can, even if it's messy, even if you miss things, especially if you miss things, because those gaps show you exactly what you don't know yet. Then come back to it later, not immediately, give it some space. A few hours, maybe a day, and try again. That spacing is what strengthens memory over time. It's simple, but it's not easy because it requires patience, and most of us are used to cramming everything into one long session. I remember doing this before exams, late nights, tons of notes, trying to cover everything. And yeah, sometimes it worked for the test, but a week later, gone, completely gone. And that's the frustrating part. You put in the effort, but the result doesn't last. This system is different. It's slower, but it sticks. Now here's something else that stood out. These courses didn't overwhelm students with content. They focused on depth over volume, which is kind of the opposite of how we usually approach studying. We try to cover everything as much as possible, as fast as possible. But real learning doesn't work like that. It's more like layering. You revisit the same idea a few times in slightly different ways, and each time it gets a little stronger, a little clearer. This surprised me, honestly, because it means you don't need to study more. You just need to study differently. Think about your last study session. How much of it was just input, reading, watching, highlighting, and how much of it was actually trying to remember without help? That ratio matters more than the total time. Now here's the key part. You don't need a perfect system. You don't need fancy tools or complicated schedules. You just need a simple loop. Learn a little, test yourself, come back later. That's it. And yeah, it might feel slower at first. You might even feel like you're doing less. But over time, you'll notice something. You remember more with less effort, and studying starts to feel calmer, more controlled, less like a constant rush. Most people miss this. They think the answer is more discipline,
more hours, more pressure. But it's not. It's a small shift in how you approach the process. And once you see it, you can't really unsee it. So if studying has been feeling frustrating lately, maybe don't try to push harder. Try stepping back and changing the way you interact with what you're learning. Start small, test yourself, give it time, and just notice what changes. No pressure, no rush, just a better way to learn. And if this gave you a small shift in how you see studying, consider liking the video, sharing it with someone who needs it, and subscribing for more calm, practical ideas like this.